This week on the Four Rivers Ag Report, so the farmer's in the field and it begs the question, will it be a harvest of plenty or plenty of nothing? We'll visit with a neighbor down the road. The question is, which road? And what can we expect in the agricultural forecast? And should I keep my umbrella handy? Those questions and much more will be answered on the Four Rivers Ag Report. Welcome to the Four Rivers Ag Report. I'm Fred Peralta. We're here to report and share what's important to all of us who live in one of the richest, most diverse agricultural areas in the country. The area we live in, where the Four Rivers, the Kaskaskia, the Wabash, the Embarrass, and the Little Wabash run, have been blessed with good soil, good climate, a pretty well-placed glacier thousands of years ago, and lots of excellent folks living here right now. All that combines to make for productive farms and productive people. So WEIU, in cooperation with the Coles County office of the University of Illinois Agricultural Extension Office, will be bringing you news and information about every aspect of rural life. We'll be talking about farming, that's for sure, but we're also going to be covering topics that are important to everyone who lives and works here. The one thing you didn't come here for is to hear me yammer on and on, so let's get moving. First, Monica Becker with the Agricultural News. Monica?
I'm Monica Becker. Ethanol producers are hoping to draft behind one of the big dogs, NASCAR. NASCAR announced last week that it had accumulated more than 1 million miles of driving on E15 fuel. That's 15% ethanol gasoline. Since the Daytona 500 in February, over 325,000 gallons of the fuel has been used in practice, qualifying and racing laps in the Sprint Cup, Nationwide, and Camping World Truck Series. Noting a seamless and successful transition to E15 use, the NASCAR report also noted improved horsepower and mileage. NASCAR started testing E15 in 2010 as part of the organization's Green Initiative. Just in time to get the grain from the fields to the elevators, the U.S. Department of Transportation announced that it has no intention to propose new regulations governing the transportation of agricultural products. There had been concerns that new commercial regulations might create some problems for farmers. After a review from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, no new rules will be proposed for any new safety requirements of changes to rules governing the transport of agricultural products, farm machinery, or farm supplies to or from a farm. China and Archer Daniels Midlands announced last week the sale of over 6.6 million bushels of soybeans recently during the visit of the Illinois Trade Mission, including Governor Pat Quinn. China is the U.S. top soybean customer, importing over 800 million bushels a year. The USDA estimates that 13% of all U.S. soybean exports originate in Illinois. Just to give you a bit of perspective, 6.6 million bushels is equal to the annual yield of Douglas, Coles, and Cumberland counties. So here are some local events to look out for. Shelbyville is having annual Scarecrow Days, October 7th, 8th, and 9th. There will be car, truck, and motorcycle shows, a quilt show, a parade, a chili supper, a 5K run, horseshoe tournaments, and more. And the area 4-Hers will be participating in the National 4-H Youth Science Experiment Day on October 5th from 9 a.m. to noon. This year's theme is Wired for Wind, an in-depth look at renewable energy. The local host for this year's event is Lakeland College, and over 75 students from Cumberland Elementary School are planning to take part. And that's it for today. See you next week.
Thank you, Monica. One of the things that happens this time of year, I go riding with my father-in-law through the country, is he's constantly speeding up and slowing down, checking out what his neighbor's doing in the field. So in the interest of rural traffic safety, I have Jim Loaf, the director of this area's U of I Ag Extension Office. And Jim, you've forgotten more about farming and harvest than I will ever know. So what's been going on this year?
Well, it's been an interesting year. It started out with a reasonable planting season, and then it turned into a little bit too wet, and then it got really, really dry. So needless to say, those are conditions that we've experienced just the year before, but it's had an impact on the harvest. There's no doubt about that. The corn, it may be more than the beans, but the test of that will be when it's over. But the corn kind of got in a situation where it just ran out of moisture, pure and simple. And
now, did we have any moisture during pollination
During pollination, we had kind of a double whammy. It was a little bit too dry, and at times we had a week of really, really hot weather during some of that and slowed it down. The beans were in a similar situation. Although the beans, the corn went in and there was an abundance of moisture, and when that happens, the roots get a little lazy maybe. When the beans came in, they followed the moisture basically because it was leaving. But what it caused in the corn was that the corn didn't go through the normal maturation process, and in some cases it just basically died on us towards the end before it was done.
So were the ears fully formed, or have we been seeing partial ears?
We've seen anywhere from fully formed, which looked pretty darn good, to some that were maybe 2/3 full. Some had streaks in them that ran the length of the ear. We don't know exactly what caused that.
So I've seen a ton of farmers in the fields. What have you been hearing about yield so far in corn?
Well, the corn yield, some of them have been surprising. I've had comments that there was 50 or 100 bushel more than they expected to get. There are some fields that have gone, in the 170, 180 range, maybe even a little higher than that. There are some fields that are 140. There are spots in the field that are nothing because it drowned it out, got replanted, drowned it out. So it's all over the board, but I think on average we're going to fare in this area better than a few other areas in the state and better than some other states.
Now, have you talked to any of your colleagues across the state how we compare to just a little bit farther north? Because I know that they've really been hit with the drought.
Well, they're not probably in the farther north. They're probably not in the field as much as we are. In the south, they got delayed, but I think there's still some surprises. The yields in some cases are better than they thought. Harvest for corn has not moved along quite as fast. There's moisture issues because it didn't go through the normal process. So the moisture kind of got stuck in the ear rather than being able to be leached back out basically. So we're still seeing some higher moisture. So farmers haven't really been going at it hot and heavy.
So let me get this straight. Yields are up and down, but the moisture that we got is in the ear, so the farmers are going to have to pay more for drying?
Yeah, they'll pay more for drying or they'll get a discount at the elevator.
Okay.
Now, in the same field or, in the same area of a township or something, you'll see some fields 18, 19%, you'll see some 24%, and you may even see that in the same length of a plot that you're going through. So, and rains broke in fields, they broke in townships, the rains just dumped some here and didn't dump any there. And so, so it's been all over, and some have switched back and forth to beans. The bean harvest is coming along. It's the reports I've got are, I don't have very many bean reports, but some of that is surprising too. They've got reasonable size in the beans, and the yields have been anywhere from 45 to 55 bushels. So
really, now,
more than we expected.
Now those are probably in the optimally planted fields, right?
No, not necessarily, but I think it all hinged on rain this year. I think, we can talk about some varieties do better than others, or some farmers are better than others, but Mother Nature once again decided to tell us that she's really in charge when it comes right down to the bottom line.
So what's the percentage on corn harvest so far, do you think?
I would say probably we're getting to the 1/3 point on corn harvest, and it's interesting to travel across the counties that I have. Some places they've stayed more in corn and done less in beans, and in some cases they're a little further along with the beans than they are with the corn. So it's just kind of a situation where maybe it was the rain that determined that, well, we're going to stay out of the corn. Some of this corn is down, and it might be, given the last week's weather or so, it might be better to be in that. But,
so the local elevators, they're handling everything that they've gotten so far?
So far. Now, sometimes if the dryers get backed up a little bit, which it could be the case, though there's not lines so much at the elevators this year, but if the dryers are backed up, they may be switching to beans or something like that.
Okay.
But the bean harvest may be 20% or so
Okay.
across the area.
Okay. So what are we going to be seeing the next couple of weeks as far as farmers in the field?
Well, they're going to continue to be operating. There's not as much traffic on the road as there is in so-called normal years. So I think, as far as the safety and as far as your comments in the opening, I think it's going to has potential to be a safer harvest. People aren't running maybe as long hours and pushing themselves as hard.
Which in a way is good.
Which is good. And we didn't get started as early as we did last year with the harvest, but the harvest is moving along at a reasonable pace, and nobody should get caught with weather. So I think we'll see more of kind of what we've seen so far.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Jim's going to be back in just a little bit to talk about the latest changes in the Extension Office. One of the things we're looking forward to doing on the Four Rivers Ag Report is visiting weekly with different area farmers. With the harvest going on, we couldn't get anyone to come to the studio today. Yeah, go figure that. So this week, we headed down Fairgrain Road and visited Dave Bumpus. Tell me about your farm. Where is it located?
Generally, it's about 10 miles north of Charleston, Illinois, scattered out over 10 to 15 miles, a little bit in Douglas County.
So how much do you farm?
It's several hundred acres.
So is it all in the family, or you've been acquiring it over the years?
Most of the farm is owned by family and aunts and uncles and so forth. Part of it, a good part of it's cash rented too. But in general, it's mostly family farm.
So how long have you been actually farming it?
Actually, my dad retired about 10 years ago, so I've been pretty much doing it full time since then, but I've been...
Okay, so this was the strangest season, wasn't it?
It definitely was.
So tell me, how was it for you?
Well, of course, spring started out really early. We planted some. We thought it was too early. We waited. Then we got put out of the field by rain for 6 weeks, and then after that it was fairly normal. And then it rained and rained, and then the rain shut off, and it didn't rain again for 2 months. We had 1 inch of rain in probably from in a 65-day period. We had 1 inch of rain right before the hot spell in July, and that was it until 2 weeks ago.
I mean, the rain you got, was it consistent, or was it just spotty, or?
Well, the rain during the summer was just one spotty rain in about a 4-mile area. Happened so it was centered fairly close to the main part of the farm, so we got some benefit from it. And of course now this fall it wants to rain every day.
Well, of course, you guys want to be
Right.
in the field.
Right.
So, what do you think? I know it's too early to tell, but what do you think your yields are like?
Oh, for the most part, the corn has been surprisingly good. We've had some fields as low as 140, but most of them have been around 180 bushel per acre. So
That's really good.
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. So the ears are all fully developed?
Actually, pollination was very well we had a 100-degree temperature almost a week of pollination, and pollination was very good.
So what do you farm beans at all?
Yeah, we're about 50% corn, 50% beans.
So how do the beans look?
They look really good. We haven't had any harvested yet. Ours are still about 5 or 6 days away, but we're trying to take advantage of this kind of weather and pick our corn while we can get it done. But
what are you thinking about the farm next spring? What are you thinking about doing? Still 50-50?
it'll be real close to 50-50. I think probably we'll generally have just a slight amount of corn on corn, so we're a little heavy on corn each year, and it'll probably be about the same way, close to more like 60-40.
Okay, last question. Where's your coffee shop at?
Well, actually, I don't go to a coffee shop.
Jim Loft is back with us, and he's going to talk about changes in the County Extension Service. What sort of stuff has been going on?
Well, we've gone through a major reorganization, and a lot of that is because of funding problems that are everywhere, so we're not alone in that boat for sure. Mm-hmm. But to try to keep the levels of service as high as we can, we've taken 4 former extension units and put them together into 1 extension unit. That's saved us some money there. We weren't meeting all the needs with the system we had of centers where the educators were, so we've now distributed the educators through the units. So what that means for someone here in the community, they will still see the same 4-H person doing the 4-H meetings. We have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and the same person will be delivering those programs. What will be different is that we now have 3 full-time equivalents of educators. Now, in our case, we have 2 half-times and 2 full-times. So the level of programming, educational programming, the level of collaboration we'll be able to do with other agencies in the community is going to go up. We've had to reach, for example, one of our educators was located in the Champaign Center. He probably had 24, 25 counties to serve. Now he's got 5.
So why don't you talk about a little bit about what the extension service, what services do you actually provide that people may not think about?
Okay, the educators are basically come from 4 different areas. The first one is family life, and that educator would be Sherry Burcham. She will be housed in the Arthur office. She was the county director for that unit, and she had formerly been an educator in that unit and wanted to continue on in the future in the role of an educator.
So what sort of services does family life mean?
What Sherry will do, she's working a lot with family dynamics, family resiliency, parenting. There'll be a thing called Intentional Harmony is a program they have, and that's balancing work and life. There's programs in parenting again for grandparents, or there are times in a marriage when you get a surprise. So that may not be like a grandparent role, but certainly it's kind of shaky.
Certainly is different, yeah.
Another educator that will be half-time is Lynette Mensa, and Lynette will be housed in Decatur, but half of her time will be here, and she'll work some out of the Arthur office, but she'll probably come here more for her programmings and collaborative things that she
Lynette
does.
is
nutrition and
wellness. Is there a big need in this area for nutrition education?
Yes, a couple of things that Lynette will work in. They'll all work in the area of obesity. Even Sherry will work in that. But Lynette works in helping you change your lifestyle. It's not just about Lynette saying eat grapes or eat this or eat that. Lynette talks about setting goals, tries to help self-motivate in that. She does a thing called I on diabetes, and I meaning I, and she'll be working in that. She works in food preservation. One of the things she'll work in is we all go to potluck dinners, be they family, be they church, be they whatever. So she's going to work in that, how to preserve, how to serve, how to be safe at those functions. Dana Holman will be working as youth development. And Dana's been in the Coles County unit before, and she's worked out of the Effingham
Now
Center.
she's the 4-H'er, right?
She will be working, her role is youth development, but that's 4-H.
Right.
So she'll be working on workforce kinds of things. She'll be working on leadership kinds of things. We're trying to help the youth reach their potential and see that there is a world out there and then how they're going to fit. Dave Shiley will be working in it's kind of a reassignment for him. He was a natural resources educator, and he is now in local foods and small farms.
So, and there's a lot of small farms around here, a lot of local foods that we don't even think about, is there?
Right. The gardening will fall into that. It will be master gardeners, master naturalists. It'll be helping people raise their food. Small farms doesn't mean that it won't be corn and soybeans. That's not Dave's background, but what all these educators bring to us is the ability to have people that if they don't have the answer, they can get it much quicker and easier and probably do a better job of getting the best answer more quickly.
So, in summary, what are the benefits of having a local extension office for, the average person around here?
One of the things that I've worked for 2 extension services prior to working here. And one of the things that we have to do is you have to repeat with people. You don't one shot change anything. This allows us to do multiple programs where we could get, if we had Dave come and do a program, we might get him once or twice, and it wouldn't be back to back maybe. Now Dave could do a timber management workshop and do it 3-part, and people could really learn and take something home. So,
well, one of the things is the diversity of agricultural life and rural life in this area is widespread. I mean, we have big flat corporate farms, we have a lot of small farms, we have nutrition and why we have a serious problem with diabetes and obesity. So there's a lot of folks could use these services, and I hope they do. Dave and the folks at the Extension office are going to be helping us out until you tell me no anymore. And so we look forward to visiting them. Lots of different people every week. And if you have questions, contact them directly. The number is going to be up on the screen. There's a joke I've heard at the coffee shop. What's the difference between a farmer and a newborn baby? Well, eventually the baby will stop crying. Well, this year we've all had plenty to cry about, especially the weather. Right now in the Four Rivers Ag Weather Report, Cameron Craig is looking at the summer of wet, 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 dry, 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 and now wet, wet, wet. Cameron?
It's been a frustrating year for farmers, to say the least. Planting season started late due to above normal precipitation, and the rains disappeared during the summer growing season, reducing overall yields across the region. Tonight I will discuss a detailed analysis of how the climate evolved over the last 6 months and give a preliminary glance at what we can expect over the next 3 months.
Setting up the spring season, the Charleston area recorded 23.4 inches of snow for the winter of 2011. The 30-year average is 19 inches, putting Charleston 4.4 inches above normal. The soil stored the moisture needed for the planting season. However, by the end of April, the total precipitation recorded was 9.81 inches of rain that completely saturated the soil for the planting season. Many farmers could not get into the fields to plant their crops. The average precipitation for April is 3.75 inches, putting this April's precipitation just over 6 inches. Between April 18th and 20th, 4 inches of rain fell across the region, creating a flooding situation that would not go away anytime soon. May continued to be wet with 4.31 inches of rain, putting it just 0.05 above the 30-year normal. Fields continued to exhibit their winter appearance because the soil was so saturated, farm equipment could not prepare the fields for planting. By mid-May, only 2 to 3% of the fields in Illinois were planted. Between the end of May and the beginning of June, the soil began to dry out enough to get into the fields. The rains returned by the 15th of June, putting the total precipitation received at 5.21 inches. June was still 1.18 inches above the normal. The average precipitation in July is 4 inches. The precipitation received this past July was near normal with 4.01 inches of rain. While precipitation was trending toward normal in July, the above-normal temperatures began to bake the soil, further stunting crop growth after a late planting season. The 30-year average temperature for July is 77 degrees. The average temperature this July was 81 degrees, putting it 4 degrees above average. Within the month, there were 19 days that the maximum temperature reached above 90 degrees. On July 22nd, the temperature hit 101 in Charleston, but did not break a record. In fact, the record for that day was 106 degrees, set back in 1914. As July turned into August, the heat would continue to bake the soil, and the rains would seldom return. August was the driest month this summer, with only 0.52 of an inch of rain spread over 4 separate days. The most rain fell on August 14th with 0.46 of an inch. 10 days of the month reached above 90 degrees, while 14 days had maximum temperatures between 88 and 89 degrees. The overall average temperature for August was 77 degrees, putting it 2 degrees above normal. The combined heat and the lack of moisture put the region in a moderate drought situation that continues today. The last major wave of heat occurred the first and second day of September, with daytime temperatures soaring to 99 and 100 degrees. The Charleston record of 97 degrees set on April 1st back in 1943 was broken. The rains began to frequent the region this month, but it frustrated some farmers trying to get into the fields for harvest. As of September 28th, a total of 2.88 inches of rain fell, keeping the region a half inch below the 30-year average. Between April and September, the total amount of precipitation recorded was 26.77 inches of rain, down 8.07 inches from the 30-year average of 34.84 inches. We started wet, had a late planting season that hindered full growth of the crops, and the dry spell set in, reducing yields further. High daytime temperatures in July and August also hindered growth for many crops throughout the region.
As the trees begin to change into magnificent colors of fall, the climate outlook for October, November, and December will continue to be dry with below normal precipitation. Temperatures will be slightly above the 30-year average through the end of the year. We will revisit the region's winter outlook later this year. Until then, be sure to visit EIU Weather Center's website for more climate data and weather information.
And finally, Kenny Chesney's significant other may think his tractor is sexy, but Jason Herman's tractor is, well, pink. It seems that Jason, who farms near Effingham, wanted to honor his mother's battle with an eventual victory over breast cancer. Kitty Jo Herman has now become an active advocate for breast cancer awareness, telling everyone about the importance of screening. So Jason and the rest of his family, in the interest of spreading the word, went this summer and painted their 20-year-old tractor white and pink. A lot of people think it's a nice gesture, Jason said. Not only a nice gesture, there's no chance you're not going to see that coming down the road. Well, we made it. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you decide to come back next week for the Four Rivers Ag Report.